Okay, good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone, to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It is Thursday, December 12th. We're in Trade and Transit 2, third floor. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Vincent Polizzi, followed by the flag salute.
Heavenly Father, we gather here tonight as humble servants of this city and its people, grateful for the trust that has been placed into us to lead with integrity, compassion, and wisdom. In these challenging times, we face complex issues that require our courage and discernment, decisions about economic growth, the fair treatment of businesses, the sustainability of our resources, and the well-being of every citizen we serve.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone, to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It is Thursday, December 12th.
Help us get better equipment, Lord. Guide us to approach these matters with open minds, open hearts, and to strive for solutions that are just and equitable. Grant us the strength to stand firm for what is right, even when it is difficult. Help us to embody the characteristics of true leadership: fairness in judgment, humility in action, and a deep commitment to serving all. May we resist the pull of division and instead foster unity, collaboration, and understanding among our council members, our city's departments, its businesses, and its people. Lord, as we seek agreements and partnerships with those who shape our city's future, remind us of the dire need for equity in all we do. May our decisions uplift those who are most vulnerable and provide opportunities for all to prosper. Let us see beyond personal gain and work together for the greater good of the community that we love. Bless us with clarity in debate, respect in disagreement, and wisdom to discern the best path forward. Keep us ever mindful of the needs of the people who depend on us and the responsibility we hold to their advocates and their representatives. And finally, we ask for your blessing upon our city, its leaders, its workers, and its families. This holiday season, may we all walk together toward a brighter and more just future, strengthened by your grace and bound by a shared commitment to the common good. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from budget work session number 2 on November 20th, 2024. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, modifications to the minutes? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Franklin, item 3, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Polizzi.
Yes.
Mr. Biter.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item 4, limited courtesy to the floor. We have one request tonight, Mr. Michael Ziccolello, 333 Market Street. I'll welcome you to the podium, sir. You have 3 minutes. And good evening to you.
Good evening. City Council members, good evening. I'm Mike Ziccolello, and I'm speaking tonight because I'm concerned about how the city is planning to change its civil service code for promotion and appointment of its police command staff for ranks above lieutenant, that's captain and assistant chief, as well as that for the fire department above platoon chief. Specifically, council's present plan to change ordinance section 157.01 will contradict state law and violate the public welfare entrusted to you. A mandatory statewide civil service promotion and appointment procedure is established for police officers and firemen in third-class cities such as Williamsport. I previously provided you all with copies of the statute. All appointments and promotions to positions in the fire and police department, with the exception of chief, shall be by civil service. The state legislature enacted this requirement to ensure that the most qualified police officers occupy these command positions in our cities because it is the most effective way to ensure the professionalism and competence of the entire police force. This is especially important because the chief of police is a political rather than a merit appointment and need only be a patrolman at the time he or she is appointed. The importance of professional and competent police command officers is underscored by the difficulties and dangers in every minute of every day of police activity. And the state legislature has made command competency mandatory by way of the Civil Service Code. They have wisely chosen not to give this power of promotion of command officers in our cities to mayors or councils. A professional and competent police force is far too important to trust to a no-holds-barred process prone to favoritism and cronyism. Council, if you change this ordinance to get around this clear mandate, you will violate the public trust and state law. When running for mayor, Mayor Slaughter repeatedly stated, "Good government brings good business, and good business brings good people." This change is a bad law, bad business. Illegal modification law civil service provisions to promote to all positions below the individual chiefs in the fire and police departments. We need the best of the best commanding our police force and fire department. In closing, you all serve to make Williamsport a better place to live. Vote down this modification. Comply with the state law civil service provisions. Make our police force and fire department the best they can be and improve life in this city. And if you pass this without comment, it will be a slap in the face of every resident of the city of Williamsport. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ziccolello. Move on to item 5, a public hearing for a liquor license. I believe Gary is out there on Zoom.
That is correct, President Yoder.
Gary, I'll turn it over to you before we open it up here.
Okay. In accordance with the state law as well as PLCB requirements, a public hearing is required anytime a municipality is doing an inter-municipality transfer of a liquor license. What is requested is that Puff Cigarette Discount Store is requesting to transfer a liquor license from the former Molitos on Broad Street, Montoursville. It requires a public hearing which will allow both those that speak for it or those that speak against it to be heard prior to the resolution going before. And I can answer any questions.
All right. I'll open the floor, excuse me, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak in the affirmative? Okay. Is there anybody that would like to speak against? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Let's jump down then to item 13, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution of the City of Williamsport approving the transfer of a restaurant liquor license number 919853 by Puff Cigarette Discount Store from Montoursville Borough into the City of Williamsport.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Narr, the floor is yours again, sir.
Thank you. Again, what is requested is Puff Cigarette Discount Store located at 1151 West 4th Street is requesting a transfer of a municipal liquor license from R19853 from Molitos on Broad Street. Providing City Council approves this liquor license transfer, it goes back to PLCB for final approval, and the liquor license would be transferred from Montoursville to the City of Williamsport. And I can address and answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. We did not have committee meetings this week, so nothing went to committee. Are there any comments or questions on the liquor license transfer? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank on item 13, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
yes,
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go down to item 14, Mrs. Frank. We'll just knock a couple of the bottom ones out here quick.
Resolution to approve CGB AV data at AdCom to provide technical support and live stream audio and video equipment.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. So this is extending the current contract we have with our illustrious AV professional, Chris Bird, for another year. This is literally the exact same contract, fee structure, et cetera, that we have been under. We're just simply extending it for a year. Chris and I had a conversation, well, the end of last week. And you know, from what Chris had informed me, everything seems to be working fine from his end. And, you know, I'll speak for everybody. I think things are working pretty good on our end as well. So we're happy to partner with you. Excited to extend this for another year, pending approval, of course, but that's the background of it. So any comments or questions? All right. Mrs. Frank, then on item 14.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thanks, Chris. Item 12, was asked to not be moved on for a couple of things that popped up since then. So I'll ask for a motion in a second. There are none, so we will, that dies. And then you can just reintroduce that whenever you're ready, Scott. Okay. Let's jump to item 7, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance amending Part 1 Administrative Code, Title 7 Employees and Benefits, Article 157 Civil Service Board, Section 157.01 of the City Code of Ordinances to clarify the definition and appointment process in final reading.
Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Austin, welcome, sir.
Good evening, members of council. You have in front of you again the ordinance amending the administrative code regarding the definitions of administrative chiefs. This was presented and voted in favor on first reading at the last council meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any comments or questions from members? Anything I'll say is, as we kind of discussed last week, this is really just confirming what's been in practice for decades. These are administrative positions. And so this is really just kind of updating our local language to reflect that. So. Okay.
I would
Yeah.
like to put forth the motion that we table this until we get more legal clarification.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion to table?
I mean, I don't think it can hurt a whole lot if we table it, just again, to get clear, vivid legal understanding. They don't just wait until after the new year, correct?
Yeah, it would table it till the January 2nd.
Till the January 2nd.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, personally, I mean, I don't see anything that raises a flag to me, but whenever we have two differing legal opinions, no offense to anybody or disrespect to anybody, I'd like to make sure that I get that warm fuzzy feeling before I say something or vote some sort of way. So I would second the motion to table it just to get a better understanding of it.
Any other comments on the motion? Only thing I will add, I feel very confident in, the legal background of doing this. So with all due respect, Vince, I'm going to vote no to the table motion. I think this is pretty clear cut and ready to go.
Okay.
I'm not super concerned about that, but respect where you're coming from.
Yeah, no worries. That's why
Maybe
we're
you,
all.
Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Mrs. Frank, on the motion to table, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
No. Motion to table does pass 4-2. We'll circle back with you, Austin, for any kind of legal clarifications we need.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this. Jamie, you're the last one, so we'll just go in order if you want, or in some kind of order. Let's go to item 6.
An ordinance ARPA transfer number 14 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Livermore, welcome.
Good evening, council members. This is the second reading of the ARPA transfer number 14. Does anybody have any questions? We discussed this last week.
Are there any comments or questions on this? So we made some final changes last week. This is as close as we're gonna get realistically to having everything is allocated, but realistically everything's spent. You know, we run into the situation where maybe stuff comes in a little bit under. I mean, we're likely going to lose a little bit of funding. We're gonna likely have to give a little bit back. That's just gonna be the nature of the beast. But whatever we do end up giving back, it's not gonna be because we didn't do our diligence, get it allocated, spent. It's because, you know, projects came in a little bit under and we don't have the opportunity to kind of go back. So I just want the public to understand that that will likely happen. It will be minimal because of the proactive nature I think we've really had with this over the past, 3 years?
And we are going to attempt over the next week to get all of our documentation
Yep.
to UHY to make sure that they can
Yep.
look at everything and try to get as close to the numbers as we possibly can.
Yep. No, and that's excellent. And, you know, I'll give a shout out to, you know, UHY specifically. We're still gonna be working with them, as we spend down the funding. You know, when we got this funding, one of the big things that we council really pushed for was, a compliance team. Because this program is so large and unique, you know, we frankly didn't have the resources, and I'd argue still don't really have the resources, with all due respect to Melanie. You're doing a great job, but I think this is just kind of a bear in itself. And you know, they've been phenomenal to work with. I've had nothing but a good experience. They're very responsive. They know this inside and out. I think we're well served and lucky to have them. So,
Yes, they've been great.
yeah. Any other comments or questions on item 7?
I do.
Mr. Biter.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question, but has there been any talks at the federal level that you're aware of that the federal government may look at communities such as Williamsport who have made such a good faith effort and say, you can keep this money at the end of it, any kind of forgiveness program, so to speak? I know that's not the correct term for it, because it's going to take the federal government years to
review
look at
everything.
all of the communities that receive this money. And if we have all of these safeguards in place,
Yeah.
that we did make that effort, and here we are at the end of the timeline, that we might not have to pay that back.
I don't know for sure, but I can talk to Claire about this from UHY and get an answer for you on that.
That may be a good question for Keller as well, to be honest with you. I do know over the past couple of weeks, as we were kind of working out a couple of kinks and questions related to a couple of the projects we were looking at, Jack and I had a little bit of a conversation about that, and it didn't go very far. And I took it as, I think at least initially, I think his sense is the incoming administration's probably going to look at other funding programs out there first. Either doing like reallocate, like the I forget the exact names of the bills, but like the Inflation Reduction Act, like a couple of those types of things first. And the way that he put it, he thought it could be actually a positive thing as far as just, you know, impact of what that might look like. But I don't know that he's sensing any of that, but I would agree. It would be a good thought to follow up on. For sure.
Yep, I'll get you guys that answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the other thing I'll point out, and this is notably a pat on the back for everybody at the city of Williamsport. So for my dissertation, I'm using the reporting data, right? And while I'll admit the data I'm using stops at the end of I'm not looking at anything in 2024. But from what I can tell, we've been pretty aggressive as far as actually spending the money compared to some other municipalities, believe it or not. So I forget what the final number was at the end of last year reporting, but we've done a really good job of actually spending the money down and getting it out. This is my reason for saying that. Ms. Mealy.
Just out of curiosity, other places had allocated it but hadn't actually spent the funds?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the reporting structure, it's allocated, obligated, and then spent.
Spent,
And
right.
yeah, and so you see a pretty big drop off from allocation to spending. There was across the board, I think people were probably just kind of figuring out like, all right, let's get this stuff allocated and then kind of figure out the kinks of getting resources
Right.
lined up and then spending it down. But yeah,
And did you get any kind of granular data on that? Like, were there places that had done like a larger grant offering or something like that, where it might not be within the purview of the municipality to have spent the funding? They would be waiting for it to.
I don't
spend
have,
elsewhere?
well, so let me answer it this way.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm curious about this. how many
it's
people
okay.
used it and whether that affects whether or not it's spent
For
out.
purposes of what I'm looking at, I'm not
Uh-huh.
looking at it at the subcategory granular
Okay.
level. But that data is there.
Mhm.
And at some point it's something I'm gonna look at. Yeah,
Cause I don't feel like I don't feel as though I've done enough research into how other municipalities were spending it and whether they,
yeah,
we've certainly dispersed a fair amount of the money, but we've also kept quite a bit for our own coffers, and I
Yep.
don't have a sense of what.
That's not
to what extent
uncommon.
that's- Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I would
it's not
imagine it's uncommon. I think especially in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
there are a lot of municipalities in our shoes, so,
yeah,
anyway, thank you.
yeah. No, absolutely. Any other comments or questions on item 6? All right. Hearing and seeing none, then Mrs. Frank on second reading of item 6.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
yes,
Ms. Mealy.
Yes,
Mr. Ryder.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Let's jump to item 8, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance transfer ordinance number 7, 2021 budget and final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mrs. Limore.
Good
Oh,
evening
Miss
again.
Livermore. I'll fix that eventually here tonight.
Do we have the second reading of transfer ordinance number 7 for the 2021 budget? We did discuss this last week, and does anybody have any questions on this?
Are there any comments or questions for Ms. Livermore on this one? It's pretty procedural, so.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy. Okay, here you can see none, Mrs. Frank on item 8.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
yes,
Ms. Mealy.
yes,
Mr. Ryder.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Let's jump down to item 11. We'll save the fun for last.
Resolution, City of Williamsport authorizing issuance and sale of tax and revenue anticipation note 2025.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Livermore.
Good evening again. So what you have before you is a resolution for a sale of tax and revenue anticipation note. This is a common thing. I believe we've done it for the last several years. This is just in case the city would come into or experience a cash flow deficit in 2025, this will protect us. So the resolution and the documents were reviewed by Eckert Simmons Law Firm, and they helped prepare documents for us that will come at a later date, and then the resolution that you guys have in front of you today.
Thank you, Ms. Livermore. This did not go to a committee. Are there any comments or questions on this?
What is the amount that we're
It's 2 million.
2 million?
And that's fairly consistent from what I remember from
Right.
past.
It's the same as the last few
Um,
years.
Yeah,
I think it's the same as it's ever been. There might have been a year
Yeah.
when it was 1.5.
It was.
yeah.
But I think, I mean, I can't speak to an year over year, but when I've inquired about it previously, the cost of this temporary loan to the city until our tax revenue comes in is about 14,000 a year. And this is just basically, as I'm sure people are familiar with in their home budgets, the whole question of if you get paid on Friday, but you need the money on Monday. Right.
Yep.
Written much larger. And, yeah. And I
Adam,
think in 20, it was here when Randy and I both got in office. So it's been probably 20 years that we've been,
Yeah.
that we have not had enough fund balance to cover our debts until the tax revenue comes in May.
Yep.
Every year.
The last 2 years, we did not have to pull the loan, but
Good.
this year there's a possibility that we
Yeah.
might, so.
Okay.
That was gonna be my other question.
Mhm.
That's good to know. Thank you. Mrs. Katz, I heard you.
that's what I was going to ask too. What did we have to use in the last couple of years? And from what Kevin is doing, it seems like it's making it easier for people to pay their taxes at this point. And maybe we won't eventually go back to many years ago when we didn't have to do this.
We can dream, Bonnie.
Yeah. And
It's positive thinking, yes.
positive thinking. Are there any other comments or questions on the tax anticipation note resolution? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 11, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Okay, Mrs. Frank, item 9, please.
An ordinance adopting various operating budgets for the city of Williamsport, including the general fund, emergency and reserve fund, capital projects fund, city hall operating fund, liquid fuels fund, debt service fund, and Act 13 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All right, here we are, second reading of our 2025 budget. I'll kind of kick this off this way, I guess. So part of the discussion we had last week was approaching the administration to identify some savings that were amenable to them going into next year. They did that. And to the tune of about $350,000 and some change. With the rationale of, putting that down to the bottom line and just kind of positioning ourselves just a little bit better going into the next cycle this time next year. So I guess we can start there. I mean, I guess my question to the group is, are there proposed changes in there that individuals are not amenable to? Or over the past week, have individuals thought differently about the approach to some of these changes at all? So I think that's kind of where I'll open the maybe conversation there. Ms. Mealy.
I'm generally amenable to to the vast majority of the reductions, but I do feel that it's worth pointing out that if we don't spend these funds, I mean, I guess I will have some questions about specific things. The $25,000 we're taking out of the Bureau of Fire. That sounds to me like a training item that we're nixing, right? What is that?
I mean, I'd have to have Sam to speak to what he reducted that by. We asked each of the departments to go through their budget
Okay.
and reduce it. So if Sam wants to explain that.
So we had a training situation, not a situation, but an opportunity for training out in Indiana.
Right. So that's removing that training from that. Okay.
Right. So that training, we didn't get it up. The guys that were going to go out didn't have the opportunity to get the applications submitted in time. There was a little bit of mix up with getting the applications in and getting them registered for the class.
Okay.
So for that reason, they weren't included. I think there was 49 that were allowed to be registered for the class. They give it once a year. So this year, we weren't able to get in it and we were able to deduct that.
Got it. Okay. I guess, so maybe that's actually somewhat of a prime example. Then I was assuming that that was something that we had decided not to do because of a tight budget. But that's not, anyway, my point is, I think a lot of this money will simply be falling to the bottom line one way or the other. And whether we remove it from the budget and put it in the bottom line now, or whether we simply leave it there and we don't spend it. Are there specific examples within here of things that we are deciding not to do? Thank you, Sam. I think that was all I needed to know. Thank you.
Sam. I mean, I think that each department tried to tighten up everything as much as they could. So I think if, like recreation, for example, took some amounts out of theirs, trying to reduce some of the things just to help reduce the budget. But if the funds were there, I think that they would possibly be able to use them.
Okay.
So I think they just are maybe going to reduce the activities, and each department decided to cut where they possibly could. So,
Right.
and you're
Understood.
right, it's possible that these funds wouldn't have been spent, but it's possible that they also could have been. So,
Right.
And Ms. Mealy, to your point, I mean, you bring up a valid point. I mean, there's a probability that, you know, even if we leave them in here, they will not be spent.
Right.
You know, I think there's a good argument to do it. Notably just, hey, it's a little bit of extra accountability
Right.
that I think we're gonna need to have, not really just next year, but the next few years, as we kind of figure out what the future is gonna kind of look like, as we kind of put together that action plan that Mayor Slaughter mentioned a few weeks ago. So I mean, it's tedious. And it's in a $30-ish million budget. It's
Right.
not a lot, but I do think it's appropriate for sure.
I would also note that there aren't specific line numbers in here, so it's going to take a bit of research, but we can
That's
do
okay.
it. And
I can get those to you. I can add line
I mean,
numbers.
we need to do it. We need to.
No,
make
we'll
these
do it.
changes now.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, so the reason I asked if there's individual items that are not amenable to members, we can do this in one motion. I
Okay.
haven't figured out how to do that.
But we can do it. Yeah.
We can do that. Yeah.
Right.
So,
So then the only thing that I would, so like I said, yeah, it doesn't particularly make a big difference to me whether we drop this money to the bottom line, recognizing that we may need to take it back out and put it back in whatever line we originally reduced in the first place. The only thing that I would have some serious questions on is the $2,500 salary addition to the city council budget specifically. And I don't, if everybody else is cool with that and we want to do this whole thing in one fell swoop, I am fine with that. I believe that it probably would be better off in a second, in another line where it could become like a stipend for someone or something like that. But since we don't know what form it's going to take, using the council budget as a holding ground for it is fine.
yeah, well, I think.
And a transfer later can be accomplished no matter where we put it.
Yeah, I think that. I think the bigger question is, is that, I think that's just a starting point. I don't know that, Jamie, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that was just hey, let's go with this
that's what I
as a
was
starting
given.
point for the conversation.
And I did approach Austin with a question about having the person be an employee of the city, or rather a consultant, or like she said, a stipend. I mean, I think we kind of agreed that an employee would be cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a perspective of what the person would be doing and the way that the HARB ordinance is set up, I think it's probably an employment relationship as opposed to something else. Doesn't look, it's possible to be something else, but I think just looking at it all on its face, it looks like an employment relationship, and there'd have to be some work to be done to have it something other than that.
Okay.
Oh, I guess Austin, there are still a handful of possibilities on the table, some sort of a third-party contract to manage it versus adding it to the responsibilities of someone within the city, or, so I think maybe this is as good a holding place as any until we figure out what that looks like. Right.
Okay. My question is, do we think that's enough? I mean, I know we're talking cuts here and this is an ad.
Well, we
but
can still move on this entire thing and then put more money into that line if we'd like.
down the
to
road, we
have that.
can.
No, but I mean, even
Yeah.
tonight,
Well,
You
no,
know,
no, I
I think
understand
we
that. I
can, we can
mean,
act on this thing as is. And
well,
then
yeah, no,
say,
no, I
okay, but we're
understand.
gonna- right,
I mean,
yeah.
we're talking about it, so I just figured let's
Yeah.
have the conversation now.
Right. Personally, I think that we probably should make that a little bit more money. I would also say that it might be better at that point to put it into something like legislative contingency until we figure out where it's going, instead of calling it out as a specific line, but that's, I don't know.
Well, it's not a
I go back.
specific line, it's going into salaries.
Oh, yeah, it is.
All it's
True.
doing is
But it's going into the
creating
salary
a
detail
part of
too, right?
of a person on paper.
Right,
That's all it's
Yeah,
doing.
we put it in basically as a part-time person.
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
That's why you see
That
the
works.
FICA change.
Yeah, but no,
Mhm.
but nothing else. Sounds good to me. I think that we should probably put a little bit more money in there and then hope, of course, that we don't spend it, but.
How much? 5,000?
I mean, 5 was what we had initially talked about on an
Okay.
annual basis. Like I said, there's still a lot of moving parts there. I mean, we have to adopt the revised ordinance. That will change the responsibilities of the person in
Yep.
charge of that. And then ideally, we would get the materials digitized.
Yep.
Making it a much simpler process to do all the recovery work for any given meeting.
Yep.
And then I think frankly, $5,000 might be more than we need to have budgeted, but I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have the board.
Just to point out, if you increase that by another 2,500, you're gonna want to add another 200 to the FICA.
That was gonna be my
Yep,
next question.
yep.
Is that a proportional change? to the
Yeah,
FICA?
yeah, the 2,500 would be about a $200 change, so another 25 would make it 4 total.
Mr. Mackey?
How many times did the hard board meet this year? Do we know?
I want to say 8 or 9. They met, from what I recall, fairly, there was a few months that they missed, but
I don't think,
They've had some
I don't think they
consistent
met in
activity.
December, but
Yeah.
aside from that, I thought they had met every month.
So once a month.
Yeah. effectively.
yeah, and I mean,
I
you're
mean,
talking,
their meetings are scheduled monthly, John.
Yeah.
Sometimes, every once in a while, but one can't predict there's not
Okay.
material for it.
and there's, well, like to Liz's point, we'll have to see what the revised ordinance looks like and how that impacts kind of the
Right.
process, but there is some additional scope of work that goes into supporting the board outside of just going to meetings, taking minutes. There's some documentation prep work that there's some cataloging that happens before and after. So,
And I think generally speaking, some research into the impact of the modification on the structure, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like there's a little bit of a kind of an editorial element, not editorial, but
Yeah.
a background research element into it. But the revised ordinance is going to make a number of the applications unnecessary because some of them will simply be by right changes. If you structure it like this, you don't need to go in and apply to make a change. So I actually think it will likely substantially lower the volume of work that HARP does and consequently lower the volume of work necessary for this position, whatever it is.
any other discussion on the HARB component? Mr. Pelisi?
Thanks. Wait, so we're talking about adding more money without even knowing what the job roles and responsibilities are yet. Wouldn't it make more sense that we fully understand the position and all of its responsibilities before and then quantify and then look to move the money around, the amount of money around?
We can certainly do that as
Because
well.
it almost, you don't want to put the cart before the horse, right?
I would be content. I think that we should put it in this year's budget as an
Mhm.
acknowledgement of the fact that there will be some level of cost, like there are for many of our boards and commissions in the city. You know, we pay some sort of a staff member, we pay a doctor to sit on the Board of Health, but I have no issue with Vince's point that we could leave it at the amount of money that it is.
Yeah, I'm
and
okay
just
with it being,
move to increase it if we need to. One of the reasons that I would support that, and I'm assuming this is the reason that you're making the point, Vince, is that if you have an amount of money in the budget, that's likely what it's going to cost. So.
yes,
Right.
I appreciate, thank you.
So
Yeah. So I'm okay
Yeah.
with the 2,500. I just,
also why I'm okay with reducing these departmental budgets, though I'm not sure exactly what impact that will have overall. I suppose if you have less money, then ideally you spend less money. That's, certainly works in my household budget that way. But
thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the HARB component? Let's go-
Adam, I do.
Yes, Mrs. Katz.
With Harb, they're already getting a big salary to help with Harb. And now they're gonna be looking for.
Hey, Bonnie, hang on.
Yes,
Nobody's getting a salary to help with hard. That's why we're looking to make this change. Nobody in the city is doing hard to begin with.
And the hard members aren't.
And the hard members are volunteer.
Bonnie, you out there? Are you muted?
oh, yes, I'm sorry, I had the
Okay.
wrong department, and thank you for clarifying it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to, I shouldn't have cut you off, but
Oh, I'm glad you did, I'm glad you did.
yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. Back to the proposed reductions. Are there other questions on any of the proposed reductions before, I mean, I can go through and make the motion, but before doing that, I want to make sure we flush out any questions, clarifications. If there's ones that we don't want to do, I want to catch them now before making the motion. Mr. Pelisi.
I'm just wondering if we think that this is enough of a reduction to get us prepared for next year or what we're looking at going into. You know, we all know that we're going to be extremely fiscally constrained next year. With, you know, the entire buildup. Jamie, I don't know if you're able to speak to it, but everything as is right now, if everything stays the same, we pass the budget as is, and then we look to next year fiscally, what are we looking at? What kind of deficit are we looking at going into 26? Everything staying as is.
Everything staying as is current would give us a anticipated cash balance of, hold on, let me get my notes in order here, sorry. And at the end of 2025, if everything stayed as is, all the revenue came in as is, all the expenditures came in as is, we'd be looking at an estimated cash balance of $1.1 million.
So with everything else that goes into that, day one, 2026, we would be looking at being in the hole by how much?
I mean, it would depend on 2026's budget, but if it was similar to this, we have I mean, our expenditures are, and our revenue would stay the same. We're at a deficit right now, and we have $4 million to get us out. Next year, we only have 1.1 to get us out, so.
So you could assume somewhere around 3 million,
Yes.
which would equate to approximately how much of a tax increase to make that up?
I will also say that I did
That's a
do
tax increase.
a bit of review of the budget, and about 75% of the budget are firm costs, rent, pension, those kind of
Mhm.
things. So only 25% of the budget can be manipulated, and that's to include things like that aren't 100% firm, like the commercial insurance policy is included in that 25%, and that's kind of, you don't really want to mess with that. Supplies, people need paper, that kind of stuff, all of those in that 25%. So it's the cutting is going to be very minimal. There's only 25% of this budget that could even be cut at all. I'm not saying that it should, but in any capability at all. But that would leave all the departments very, very, very tight.
So to answer your question, Vince, probably not. To
I
be candid, but look, it's a start. It gets us a little bit closer to that, number one. We've got work to do going into next year, to the mayor's point about an action plan. That 25% essentially discretionary spending is what you're talking about. I'd make the argument that there's a number of items of that are not really discretionary that we
Correct.
need to do, right? And so, it's gonna take a good level of prudence, thoughtfulness to, I think, really maximize that 25% to to kind of get to where we need to go for next year's budget, right? I mean, we could, if there's other ideas that others have, we can certainly talk about them, explore them, but I don't know that we're gonna find $1 million. No,
No.
$3 million, $3 million.
Well, I think to
We're
Vince's
gonna invest
point,
it.
we're not gonna find. $3
Yeah, we're not
million
gonna find it
tonight.
here and now.
We are not. I more or less meant, getting,
Find a little bit more to get us prepared for what's about to come.
yeah, but I mean, like, we're not gonna find 7 figures is my point.
Mhm.
Whether it's $1 million or 3 million,
Right.
right? It's gonna take months to kind of really work through that. So I'm looking forward to doing that from council's perspective,
Mhm.
but, yeah. This is a good start.
Yeah.
Mr. Allison.
Yeah, going back to last year, even year before that, we had planned to do a lot of planning and
Mhm.
figuring out and budget crunching. And for various reasons, we didn't hit the mark. And we're at the 12th hour of 2024 now, so I don't think we can do anything significant at this point, but to Vince's point, we have to do something significant next year. That's my approach. I'm dedicated to, as a team, as part of the team, to do what we need to do. But we have to, the plan, whatever it's going to be, is going to include the administration as well. So I think we can get there. I really do. Maybe that's too optimistic, but it's better to start out there, I think. Because some of the things that we've already talked about that we could put into practice and changes we can make. So that's just, yeah, that's where I stand right now.
Miss Millie, you had your hand up earlier. I don't want to forget about you.
Yeah, no, I just to chime in on that, yeah, we, I would also mention, Vince, just for the record, that 75 to 80% of our costs have always been fixed in the city bare minimum. And then most of the other ones are not discretionary. I mean, if I actually count the theoretically discretionary items, I can probably name them on one hand. We give money to the SPCA to help with the spay and neuter program. It's $28,000. There simply aren't things that we can just willy-nilly say, like, that's it. We're not paying for that anymore. There's nothing like that in our budget at this point. And that 75 to 80% of fixed costs that we have is going to increase next year by anywhere from 1% to 8%, depending on our healthcare costs, depending on if insurance rises, cybersecurity threats, stuff like that. Those costs will only increase. That's what happens every year with all of the fixed costs. And so I think it would have been a mistake for any of us to think that we were going to find $1 million in this year's budget that we could simply trim out and everything would continue to function as usual and the wagon would keep on rolling without its wheels. We need a bigger fix, and the longer we wait to institute a bigger fix, the less time we have to figure it out and the less pretty it is.
No, I fully understand.
Yeah.
And I agree with where you guys are
And
coming from.
right, I mean, I have been trying for several years to engage us in a larger dialogue about that lasts longer than the 2 weeks at the end of the year when we look at this and we say, wow, we're screwed. And then we move on. It's, we have to figure out another option and really, I mean, I've been saying for 5 years that if we don't do it this year, we're screwed next year. But this year we might actually be the year that we really are screwed next year. I'm not sure. The truth of the matter is that we will spend a little less than we figured we were going to spend, and we will take in a little more than we figured we were going to take in. And the budget hole at the end of next year, we will be engaging in deficit spending, maybe $1 million or $2 million. But that's still a 1 to 3 tax mill increase if we don't have if we don't find a way to get rid of that extra expense to the city or increase our revenue.
Yep.
That's all there is to it. Um, when I go out in the community, people are like, yeah, you sound really smart up there. And I'm like, no, I'm not. It's not rocket science. It is like, you have this much, you need that much. I'm like, that's all there is. It's so, and unfortunately, there's just not, we don't have a lot of places where we can make huge changes. And we had an opportunity with the funding that we received from the pandemic, the ARPA funding, to kind of put our finger in the hole in the wall, like to plug the gap for a moment, but that is expiring. And we did not take that couple year break for what it was, which was an opportunity to figure out a better system. And now we need to do it. So I would advocate for us getting on that, I guess. If you don't mind real quick,
Sure.
the contracted services in the police department, that $12,800, what's that?
I'm gonna let the police speak to that.
I
Here,
figured, that's why I was looking at you.
He brought notes, so I
Okay.
can read it for him.
All right.
Some can be covered by the grant. So they think that some of the contracted services expenses would be able to be covered by the grant rather
Okay.
than have to come out of the general fund.
Okay, so once again, we're not nixing, right, anything. We're just like hopefully offsetting it elsewhere. Okay. I just wanted to.
I was trying to hit the unmute button on the,
Oh.
to explain that.
Oh,
So I'm
oh,
on Zoom here.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were out there, Chief Snyder.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like.
She was right on that, but I also did want to touch on the base that right now we are going through transitioning a record management system. So right now we're still paying for Spillman because we got to do the data conversion. So hopefully by 2026 we can do a significant savings to the tune of $20,000 or $30,000 altogether with contract services. But I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, that's good. That would be that would be excellent. I think that was what I said to Adam when I talked to him earlier this afternoon, was like, it would have been nice to see something where we were like, okay, we cut this $50,000 and we won't have to spend it next year. But none of that is happening, and I wasn't expecting it to. But anyway, that's good news. Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, I think the other point to make is next year we will have to once again find this $242,000 that we're this year funding out of ARPA. So the hole is a little deeper. We are with the capital projects items that we are purchasing with ARPA funding. I think we actually are offsetting those costs, and those will not recur next year. We will have much smaller replacement values in the capital projects fund. So there we actually are saving ourselves money year over year. But anyway, I am fine with moving, knowing that that is not something that we're getting rid of that we desperately need. I'm fine with moving on this as is.
Are there any other questions on any of these proposed reductions?
Adam?
Yes.
We're just going to talk about what is proposed to us right now, not if anything we have to add to it, right?
If there's additional things,
Separately.
yeah, I think we can do those separately.
I think we
If you have additional ones to do.
because we also have a bunch of work to do on the capital budget. I think
Yeah,
we have a
and
couple of-
I have that too. So let's do this. Let's try to work through this one here quick.
Okay, and I think we have to agree, Liz, you've said this many, many times. We have taken a lot of the money from ARPA and did a lot of rec things in the parks and everything, which is making them all look great and everything. But we have to start thinking about down the line of maintaining all of this. And that's a huge thing that we always neglect when it comes to, any kind of budgets. If this was 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, and we saw that things had to be, redone somewheres in the parks, guaranteed we wouldn't have the money to do it. And that's kind of frightening in a way because even though everything looks nice and we're excited about what we're presenting to the public for recreation, I'm only using rec as one thing. I mean, there's probably other things at this point, but we do have to be careful. We've got to come up with a plan of put some nickels away all the time, for God's sakes. It's instead of us sweating out at the end of the year. And it is frightening. So That's all I have to say, and I'm glad, okay, because I have things I want to add, and I have questions about the budget.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
Mrs. Katz. So I'll make a motion to amend the budget as follows, and I'm gonna read through a bunch of line items and outline the new number. Jamie, you have all this, so.
Yep.
You should be okay there. So I'll make a motion to amend the budget as follows. Mayor, supplies and materials line item to $1,200, engineering advertising line item to $0. Streets and Parks Director's Office training line item to $2,000, office supplies to $3,000, Streets and Parks traffic control facility maintenance to $30,000, Bowman Field maintenance to $45,000, flood control gas to $16,000, flood control materials to $23,000, equipment repairs to $13,000, Parks Department contracted services to $4,500, Waste Garden Commission to $1,000, facility maintenance to $3,000, equipment repairs to $20,000, recreation program special events to $20,000, facility maintenance to $8,000, pool program equipment repairs to $8,000, facility maintenance to $4,000, finance and purchasing supplies and materials to $5,000, planning technology to $1,600, Bureau of Fire training to $35,000, travel to $20,000, supplies and materials to $90,000, Bureau of Police contracted services to $89,000, firearms to $35,000, uniforms to $87,000, vehicle purchase to $49,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. That's the total reduction of $351,725 to be precise. Any comments, questions on the proposed motion to reduce? Austin, did I miss anything? Everything okay there?
I was following along. I think you got everything.
Cool. Mr. Pelisi?
No, before we vote, I just do want to make the comment that I appreciate the work that the mayor's office has done and our departments going through and realizing the situation that we're in and discerning what our needs are versus what our wants are, and knowing the situation that, like I said, the situation that we're in, and finding some savings, because we can use every single penny.
Yeah.
So.
Any other comments or questions on the proposed amendment? Okay, Mrs. Franklin, the proposed amendment.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion to amend passes 7-0. Then I'll make a second motion to amend the city council line item salaries to 24,250 and FICA to 1860. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions related to those changes? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank, on that proposed amendment.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion to amend passes 7-0. So those are the, I'm sorry, let me go to this. Let's go to the capital projects budget. I'll make the motion to amend the capital projects budget, decrease capital purchase line items codes by 25,000, police by 33,000, parks by 380,000, streets by 350,000. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any comment? And just to be clear, these are the changes that we made to the rescue plan budget last week and finalized this week. We're funding these purchases with rescue plan funding. And so we can reduce that because we don't need to spend that money this year. Any other comments or questions on the proposed changes there? Ms. Mealy?
Just asking, what exactly the $380,000 in parts? What is that?
I'm sorry, which page you're on
I'm looking at the capital budget at the very end. We have a $250,000 purchase slated for 2025 proposed.
so Parks was a bucket truck for a Forester's 250,000.
Yeah.
And then there was Streets had a leaf truck for 350.
But the decrease to capital purchases for Parks is 380. That was what you said.
I'm
right?
sorry, that
Yeah.
must be a typo. Hold on, let me just double check
Okay,
my info here. Sorry.
that's fine. I'm just trying to see.
Parks should be 250.
Okay.
Okay,
I apologize for that.
I'm gonna withdraw my amendment.
okay.
Then I'll make a motion to amend the capital projects budget, decrease the expenditure, capital purchase line items codes by 25,000, police by 33,000, parks by 280,000.
250.
250,000, excuse me, and then streets by 350,000. Is there a second?
Second.
And that's fixed. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz.
That was- No, just trying to make sure that was where we were trying to go. All right. And now I apologize, trying to check up on that.
No worries. Double check.
Um. Sorry, our transfer ordinance is a little unclear on this, that's why, yeah. It's just public works vehicles to the tune of 844,000. And ARPA, sorry, I'm not, yeah, Jamie, I think it's pretty minor and we can make the amendment later to the budget, but I'm concerned that there were maybe things in 26 that we were also funding. Not just 25 purchases.
That's
but
from
also
ARPA.
20s.
That's from ARPA. Yep. So
Yeah,
those
but
those
they're
will be
not- but they're
changed.
not
So we
reflected
don't
in the
need, so it's the
expenditures.
250 that's on, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, the
just
two,
checking.
yeah.
It is
Yep.
supposed to be this 250 that's on our printed sheet. Got it.
We're gonna work ahead
Okay.
essentially with ARPA.
So
Yes.
effectively, it is 380 in total that we're taking from.
So,
ARPA for parks.
Yes,
That's
but
what-
it's just
only
previous
But
year, yeah.
it's only 250.
in
Currently, yes.
2025.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
That's, sorry, I got myself lost then. trying to
Well,
sort
and that's
that out.
how I think everything got a little mixed up.
Okay, yeah, all right. Thank you, Adam, for bearing with me. All right.
No, hey, look, that's part of the,
Mm.
thank you for.
I caught it
thank you for
initially
looking.
and then all of a sudden it was.
No, no
like-
worries. Thank you for checking. It's
All
okay.
right.
That's good.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? You, Mr. Mackey?
Just on that, I do have a general question about the capital projects budget, but if it's not appropriate to talk about it now, it's just a clarification from the work sessions that we had. And I apologize, I wasn't here last week. If we talked about it last week, I apologize, but the emergency rescue vehicle in the capital projects budget that says was purchased in 2023.
It was actually purchased by a grant. That's the Bearcat. And I think we established that I think there was an error on the documentation.
Okay.
It's being built right now. So I believe that was the problem, but that's what that was, the Bearcat.
And this
That we
is
received a grant for.
through Flick's office, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So that'll be corrected on the final budget too.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Right.
do we need to? I mean, the thought process here is, do we need to start to save to buy a new one in 20 years? I mean,
Well,
I'm just saying that's $310,000 right there.
Hang on a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, so, in terms of the 2025 budget, there's nothing we need to do. So the piece that you're looking at is really
We
the,
are actually, John. $310,000 and we're putting aside 31,000 for it this year and 15,500 next.
Yeah.
So we are currently saving to buy another one in 20 years.
Right. So should we be is the question.
so we all.
Better
that's what she-
to do it and stop. Better to do it and not buy the vehicle than to not do it and buy the vehicle.
So what she's
suppose
saying
that-
is we are currently
Yeah.
saving towards,
He's
Right,
saying, we shouldn't.
you're
Right.
saying we should. Yeah, I'm missing.
Right, yeah,
I thought you
yeah,
were
I'm in the
asking,
same boat with you,
should
but
we?
right.
No, I
for the
understand
next
that we're
one.
saving for
Okay,
it.
I
I'm
gotcha.
saying we have one now. It's good for 20 years. The question is, do we even really need one in the first place?
Right.
So, you know, you know,
Fair point.
Right.
And, I think had this debate a couple of different times when we talk about capital projects about it. I mean, look, a grant paid for it.
Yeah, and I'm-
Nothing we had to sign off on.
and I'm
Which I
thankful
don't,
for that.
yeah, and I'm thankful for that too. I get you, but the comment I would make is, look, next year when we start putting this plan together, everybody's got to come to that with an open mind. I mean, I think a part of how we position ourselves for success in the future is either doing things differently, or we might have to not do some things.
Right.
That could be one of them.
Mhm.
I don't know if it is or not. I mean, I don't want to say that it is, but like,
It's all good.
it's a valid point. And I think that, and frankly, I don't think there's anything that's not on the table, at least for me.
Sure.
Mhm.
I mean, there was never an appetite for one of these things before this fell out of the sky and dropped in our lap. So,
Oh, no, there has been.
no,
Not-
an appetite on
Oh,
this
yeah.
side of the table
Right.
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. So,
Mhm.
just the fact now that we got one, that's all I'm,
Mhm.
I'm just asking the question.
Well, John's just found us $45,000 in next year's budget. If we remove the savings and take out next year's expense.
Duly noted point, John. I understand. So. Any other questions on the proposed amendment on capital projects? All right, here you see none. Mrs. Frank on the third proposed amendment.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. And then there is a fourth one, that there's one more, so under Bureau of Law Legal Services.
Hey,
Uh,
Adam, while we're on capital budget,
Yep.
can I propose one more change to the
Sure.
capital budget page?
Sorry, yep,
No, I was just.
No, you're good.
we're all
Yeah,
there.
you're good.
That was-
go ahead.
The line number 47200, the sale of City Hall. I would like to make a motion to reduce that number to 0
I'll second that.
until we have an indication of an actual plan.
Yep,
I
Fair.
don't want to count on income that we are not going to have in this year's budget.
yep. Fair. Any other comments or questions on that item? Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on that proposed amendment, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-1.
And can I make one further point while we're on that page, Adam?
Sure.
Okay. My last point is that reducing that income as well as some of the outflow from capital projects does still leave us with a deficit, I believe, in capital projects, although I haven't calculated precisely what it is.
So I can tell you with City Hall still in there,
Uh-huh.
but leaving the savings from the capital purchases in there, it was taking us down to about $14,000 unfunded.
Okay.
So that would give us
514,000.
575, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's
and-
better than it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was going to point out that the other note I, for some reason, made in my budget book was that Scott Livermore had mentioned that we could potentially save $200,000 by getting a walk behind leaf machine. And that's still very much on the table, please, Scott. As a concept, because that would reduce our unfunded liabilities substantially in capital projects. Just wanted to make that point while we had the platform to do it
Yeah,
meaningfully.
understood.
Thanks. Okay, now on to the Bureau of Law.
Yeah, sorry. So let's go to the Bureau of Law Legal Services line item. I'd make a motion to increase that line item, legal services in the Bureau of Law, to add $30,000. Is there a second?
Second.
There's some litigation fees that just popped up that we will need to cover next year, and the administration asked to change that one to do that.
Mhm.
So any additional comments or questions? Hearing and see none, Mrs. Frank, on that proposed amendment?
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes,
Ms. Mealy.
Yes,
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 7-0. Am I missing anything, Jamie? I think that's all
Nope,
that
I
we
think
had
you're good.
talked about.
Yep.
Are there others that members have? Bonnie, I know you said you had a couple.
yes, hold on 2 seconds.
Real quick, if I can jump in.
Yeah.
While Bonnie's looking up her information, when we're going through these, I know we had a council member that was adamant about having page numbers so we could all follow along very quickly and accurately. So when we go through this, if we could just call out the page number we're referencing when we talk about line items, I would
thank you, Vince.
appreciate it.
And
I don't want to speak for everyone on the page numbers, though.
I'll apologize. I was working off of a digital format that doesn't have page numbers, so if I confused anybody, my apologies. I'm just trying to practice some brevity that I don't normally do. So,
Okay, I'm ready.
okay.
Page 70.
Look at that.
Okay, top of the page, the planning department. Could you all, maybe I missed this at the first budget meeting. What is this huge increase in the salaries for the planning department?
Bonnie, the huge increase in the salaries for the planning department relates to the fact that those salaries used to be offset. Last year, we showed the salaries as offset in the budget related to a supplement from community development funding. This year, we've restructured the way that that looks. So there's the $55,000 input from community development funding is shown in the salary line, reducing the salary amount. But also of note, community development funding is generally speaking on the decline. So community development block grant funding, which means that more and more the planning department is not by and large funded by our block grant funding at all. I think $55,000 is the total contribution of community development block grant funding to our planning department this year. So those salaries, it's an artificial increase. We've always been paying those people those salaries. We simply were budgeting them in two different places last year. One part taken from block grant funding and one part taken from the general fund budget.
Yes,
This
that's
year, they're
exactly
all
correct.
coming out of the general fund budget, and the 55,000 is the only offset for those salaries.
I remember that from last year. Again, these salaries are really, really high. Okay, let's go on to the next one. On page on page 69. HR. I would like to, it's a line item of, it's 51010 and 1080. I would like to decrease that back to 69,010. The HR person has been here less than a month, and I don't see why we're giving that person a cost of living raise.
Are you making that amendment?
I'm making that amendment, yes.
Is there a second?
I apologize. I'm still trying to figure out where we're at.
We're on page
Here we go.
69.
Got it.
Yep. Is there a second? You guys okay?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any comments, questions on the line item? So she's reducing So to be clear, she's reducing a different line item in the budget.
Right,
She's using page 69 to a reference.
right.
Make your life easier.
Okay, account number 1080, human resource.
Yep. And I don't know what page.
I'm looking at
24.
HR.
I love having these page numbers.
So Bonnie's proposing to reduce the very first line item to its 2024 actual, since the new human resources director has been on board for a month. Essentially, is that correct, Bonnie?
That's it, right, exactly.
Are there any comments, questions on that proposed amendment?
Is the mayor on?
Is Derek on? No.
No.
I was gonna say, I'd rather have a little bit of input from the administration.
Yeah,
but
Jamie, are
I
you able
don't
to?
disagree with that
I
as
can-
conceptually.
I can tell you that the salary is low for that type of position. And I also cannot state what her
Yeah.
offer letter stated either. So, that, I mean, that should also be looked at, but, and a 3% is what we do, what the mayor
Yep.
proposed for the administration. So.
Understood. Okay.
I mean, if she would have got hired 4 months ago, would we have a problem with this? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, she's part of the administration. I
Well,
mean, like that now we're gonna start determining what, you know what I mean? It just doesn't, this
Yeah.
doesn't feel right.
I would
We're talking
also
about
say
$2,000.
it's likely that was
Yeah,
what that basically she was hired as a, for your first month, this
Right.
is what you'll make, and then it will be augmented to.
yeah.
So I don't know. There might be other salary reductions that I could agree to, but that one is not one of them. Yeah.
I think, Bonnie, if I may, please tell me if I'm wrong. I think the point that she's making is, I don't know if we have probationary periods for our at-will employees.
We do.
We do.
Mhm.
Okay. What is the probationary? period?
I believe it's 6 months.
It's 6 months.
Mhm.
Okay.
We follow basically the city hall union contract, their
Okay.
probationary period, which is 6
Gotcha.
months.
So my assumption, Bonnie, is that, there should be a probationary period before any kind of increase or anything like that happens. That's my assumption. Fair. We're already doing that though, is what it sounds like. So,
All other like vacation benefits and those types of things are held until the probationary time is over. But I mean, I don't know that the salary was how it was listed on
Okay.
our offer letter. I don't know.
gotcha. Okay. Just if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine, but just a technical mechanism on the probationary period. Because I wasn't aware of that, and so that's good information. From a salary perspective, are any changes to salary? I assume that would happen after the probationary period. Do you know? You don't know.
I mean, in the aspect since I've been here, there haven't been hiring positions that are usually changing after probationary period. I mean, I think there have been some in the past, but I
Okay.
mean, as far as I know, currently, no.
Okay.
It's kind of, whatever the budget was for that
Yep.
position and
Okay.
any negotiation made by the hiree.
If you could have her maybe provide some detail on what the probationary period for employees looks like and send it out. I think that might answer a handful of questions for a couple people, and would be good to know. And so thank you for that. That's helpful. So, Mr. Allison.
Would you happen to know how many employees exactly we have that the HR oversees?
I believe it's about 150, but don't quote me on exactly, but it's about, she oversees everybody in the city. So it's about 150, I believe.
Okay. That's a substantial
And,
number.
and she does all the medical benefits
Right,
and she does
exactly.
4 union contracts. And I would say there are 8 different medical policies that the city
Mhm.
has throughout the department. So she does that, all the onboarding, all the, offboarding, all of that by herself, no assistant, any of that. So,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
158.3,
Yeah,
including her.
there you go. You're right.
Right. Yeah,
I was close.
but no, but I think it's 157. I think that 158
Yeah.
includes bringing somebody in while someone else is returning.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with what everybody's saying. In my own mind, because I'm thinking this person wasn't here very long. I mean, we just approved her coming on, what, two weeks ago? I'm lost track of time, and that's why I just brought that up. But I've also stated that HR over the years has changed dramatically, and it's become more complicated and more strenuous, and it's more stressful, and I can understand that. I just, in my mind, I'm trying to find every part of this money that we are forking out to find places that we can, cut somewheres, because the salaries and between the pensions and the salaries, we're getting killed. We really are. But anyhow, I'll agree with the rest of you because it is what it is, and it probably was stated, but I would like to know for sure. Okay, if this was part of her contract. Jamie, could you find that out since the mayor isn't here?
As long as
I
it's,
know. Yeah.
able to be given to outside people, I will. Yeah, as long as it's legally acceptable for me to share what was in her, contract, I can get you that information. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jamie.
Go ahead.
So we have to vote we have a motion on the floor, don't we? So we have to vote on it, right?
That's correct. Are there any? Well, yep. Bonnie, if you want to withdraw your motion, you're welcome to, but if not, then we have to vote on it. That's correct.
I'll withdraw the motion. That's what I was asking.
Okay.
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 Okay. Now, if everybody could go to page 72, it's a question. I have a question about it. It's information technology with 1085 and 2010. Could you tell me what the 2010 IT person, is that Chris who handles the
No, that's Sean Bastian who handles the police items. 2010 is the police department, department number, and Sean Bastian is the IT coordinator, and part of him is paid for out of their grant. So, that's why it says information technology included in treasury. So this portion of, the salaries are not included in the general fund. They're used through, the PCCD grant that the police have.
and how long is this grant good for? Do you know, Jamie?
I believe the grant goes through the end of 2025. We have put a portion of Sean's salary into Chris's budget, into the IT budget, to ensure that, we have enough funding for him. So
Okay,
it's about half is what we did to make sure, and he is a union employee.
okay, okay. That I did know. That I did know. And with the IT person, I think you all know that I said that I was a little bit upset with giving a cost of living raise for our IT person. And Chris, I know you're a little bit angry with me, but again, I'm looking at every nook and cranny that we can save money. And because now we have somebody, we're paying somebody for to do our council meetings at 500 a month. I didn't think that cost of living raise was, worth it. Now, I don't know what everybody else feels about that, but I know all of you were angry. We were all angry when this came about. And this is how it was before, crickets.
Yeah, Bonnie, and you're right to point out that we were all disappointed at that point in time when that did happen. But we did find a solution. Whether or not it's something that's fiscally responsible is another point that we have talked about as well. But it is in Mr. Black's job description, and he is at the discretion of the mayor as far as what his role is within the city. And to your point with the other salaries for human resources, being the one that we already mentioned, at this point, we're going to get into splitting hairs to save an additional $10,000 to $15,000 at most. I personally would like to see us put forth that effort towards the budget next year when we start that process. I would hope sometime in February or March. I would urge that to the administration, to all that are here and all that are not, hopefully listening out there in TV land right now. And that's where we do the real work and we make those hard decisions and it not be on the fly this evening.
Agreed.
There are other areas that I would like to do, but I think I would like to wait and do these, probably discuss this after the new year. Okay, of where we're going with some of the salaries. Because as you know, I think the codes officer manager, her salary is absolutely pitiful. Our own city clerk, which every department in the city goes to and she does work for, her salary is pitiful. And both these women have been working for the city for a long time. And I just find it, interesting that all the administration wants to do is give them a cost of living raise. And I know I'm saying, high salaries, but these are people that the public is in touch with constantly, and they do a heck of a lot of work in so many different areas, both of them do. And so I want you all to keep that in mind, because I just, every time I look at the budget, and over the years, we tried to give them raises and they were turned down. And that's an area that I'm disappointed in. That we don't, number one, stand up for our own city clerk. And I know the codes manager, she does a heck of a job. I mean, you can imagine she gets yelled at all the time too. So, but other than that, you all answered my questions. of what I had. So thank you for listening to me for.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie. Are there other changes that other members have that they want to discuss? Ms. Mealy.
I have one increase that I'd like to propose. I'm somewhat expecting to get shot down because in the rush of December, in the restaurant business, I did not have time to reach out to members of council as I'd hoped to do this week to discuss this with you all privately. I was once years ago and may still be, but I don't think there's anything official going on anymore. The city council representative to Williamsport's bicycle committee. And Williamsport's bicycle committee has lucked in the last couple of years into some excellent leadership at the hands of Rob Cooley from Penn College, who's really been doing wonderful things and pushing hard for exciting new bike programs in the city, including he's been one of the drivers behind the pump track that we are putting in Shaw Place Park. In partnership with the pump track, Mr. Cooley has worked on a very small pilot bike lane that connects a handful of amenities in that part of the city to allow kids to get to and from the pump track on their bicycles without being in a lane of traffic. And he, in discussions with him, he is requesting that the city put some money into a line to do this sort of bike lane pilot that would provide safe access to the pump track I believe the pump track is slated to be finished in 25. And then that pilot would also serve to sort of help inform an application that we will be working on in 25 for Safe Streets for All funding for a larger bike lane project within the city. This is money that, depending on what happens with Safe Streets for All funding, it's possible that we wouldn't need, but it's a placeholder that could serve as a match to county funding or to some Safe Streets for All funding. I think that it would be a good thing to put into the budget this year. So I am making a motion to insert a line into the streets department, a new budget line for bike lane. I think I just put bike lanes probably, and fund it to the tune of $20,000.
Is there a second?
What page?
Oh, damn it, John.
38.
Thank you. Well, somebody's familiar with the budget book.
I just looked on the front page.
John's the one that asked for him in
I
his
know,
defense.
no.
So, is there
It is
a
exceptionally helpful and
Page
when.
30?
38?
38.
Oh, is there a second?
I would second that.
Any comments or questions on that proposed change?
And I just need to be clear that this is actually something that I don't visualize necessarily being an annual expense. This
Yep.
is a pilot program and then hopefully, but I do think potentially if we were looking at lining the streets, it might slightly increase our street lining contract at some point to put in bike lanes.
Yeah.
But this is a larger project that is not an ongoing every year thing.
Mr. Biter. Oh,
Go ahead,
Mr. Mackey,
Robert.
sorry.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
No,
No.
the question I
I wasn't
had was
looking,
about
sorry.
a previous ordinance. Do we not have an ordinance that we have to strike bike lanes on any repaved street within a certain area?
We have an ordinance that states that it, right now, the name of it is failing me, but Scott Williams from the county, who's part of Williamsport's bike committee, as well as several other people, worked on basically a safe streets ordinance for the city that states that we will, in doing work on streets, prioritize creating safe modes of transit for all within those streets. I wouldn't say it's toothless, but it doesn't have specific rules within it that say you have to put a bike lane in when you rebuild a street. It just says that the city recognizes that it is important to create transit spaces, not just for vehicles, basically, but for other modes of transportation. But this would be right in that ordinance. We outlined a potential bike lane, like a bike lane network. Scott Williams from the county once again made the map, and Scott's a really good guy who also serves in the school board. So he's heavily involved in local and general municipal government. This, once again, this funding would not necessarily look at that total bike lane map, but it would just kind of look at doing a pilot project and seeing how well Williamsport adapts to it. And then ideally, we would look at getting a larger network of bike lanes to protect two-wheeled vehicles a little better than we're currently protecting them in the city.
Mr. Mackey, then Mr. Pelisi.
Do we have, where is this map that you're speaking of?
The map is actually, it would be in the city's book of ordinances. It's attached to the ordinance related to the safe streets. And I can find it for you.
What is
John,
the,
but
what
no,
is
I'm
the?
not prepared, so it's not.
No,
here.
what is the pilot street that we're talking about?
We are talking about basically connecting Shaw to Brandon, I think, with like a square, basically a bike lane square that connects a couple of the city's amenities in the northern part of the city.
And
Let me look.
I forget the specific street that you had said about Liz.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I think Rob has probably put it in a text message to me. Let me pull this up and see. Shaw Park, Brandon Park, Riverwalk Connector Path, approximately 6 miles.
And
A loop derived from the city's approved bike route map.
we're just envisioning paint. Are we like?
This is money that will enable us to begin exploring what's possible, basically.
No, I don't know why you're smiling at me. I think this is okay. Give me a moment. No, I
put it in his pocket for you.
Generally, I think this is a good idea. I'm just wondering is paint enough to protect people on bikes? Do we ever envision a scenario in which we could see something like we see in bigger cities or in Europe where there's actually a concrete divider that actually offers some level of protection for people on bikes as opposed to just, paint's nice, but.
I think it depends on the city streets that you're talking about.
Right.
In some cases, paint really is sufficient. It designates a space where the people know is not theirs, right? And indicates that we're expecting other modes of transit to use a city street aside from a car, right? And then on major streets, you're right, bigger things are needed.
Right.
There is a federal grant, Safe Streets for All, that provides, actually Lancaster got $12 million a year or two ago. To work on vision zero traffic fatalities. Augment their transit. their transit network. And I think in the long run, that is the path that we need to go. The city, the city is not going to fund major roadway rebuilding.
I think
But
Valerie wants to add.
yeah.
I was just gonna add, Melanie did apply for, and we did receive the Safe Streets for All grant this year.
For action plan,
For
right?
action plan.
Right.
Yep.
So we're working and we'll be, where are we? Thanks, Valerie. But where are we on the action plan? We're not, we just got it. Okay, got it. So, and then I believe there's a cycle that applications, according to Teresa Sparacino, there's applications are due in May for a cycle that would help fund like bike lane pilot programs. But I'm not able to find much about that online, and I have not heard from Teresa in terms of what specifically that looks like. But anyway, yeah, John, I would agree that, right, our budgetary capacity is not sufficient to implement, like, to put a bike lane on West 4th Street that actually protects cyclists. But
Right.
this allows us to provide a bit more safety for kids going around, to begin to get the community used to the idea that there are bikes on the streets and we expect them to be there. And then in concert with developing our action plan, we sort of examine how that's working. And I think we figure out how to tackle it moving forward.
So possibly reduce the brick streets line item by 20,000 to make it all work out nice and even.
There is an ordinance
favor of
with
that.
the brick street line item. I don't believe it says a specific amount. I just know that it says that we have to leave a line item in there. So, I do know that there's an ordinance with the brick street line.
No, I
item.
understand.
And John,
I
you
just-
know that I will drop this motion like a hot potato if you
I
take
am
money
just
out of that brick street.
unsure
So
if
it's
the
that
exact-
important to you, then I will leave the bike lanes alone.
Well,
Because
I mean, it's all about compromise. It's about compromise.
oh,
Right?
it is about compromise, but that to me is not compromising.
We want to keep kids safe, or do we want to have brick
wanna do
streets?
both.
Okay.
Brick streets are currently the only streets you can safely cycle on in the city.
Yeah, I suppose. Just don't
Right.
ride down the middle of it.
Right.
Mr. Pelisi, you had a question.
No, just a statement. That was good, John, by the way. No, as much as I understand and appreciate where, Liz is adamant about the bike lanes and wanting to see that for the social development of our town. Personally, I don't think that this is the right time, given our fiscal situation, to look at putting that money there. Especially after we went to the mayor and to the administration, asked them to look internally at their budgets to find extra savings for us to get prepared for what's to come. And then just around in turn, take the savings that they found us and go, well, let's just throw 20 grand in a bike pilot program. I apologize, Liz, as much as I like the bikes, I've got a Huffy.
Right.
I just can't get behind that one.
You can do
And
better
it,
than a Huffy.
honestly, I have a Trek, but whatever. Not saying that I wouldn't be behind this in the future. Just currently right now, I can't get behind this. And I think that, we've got Valerie and Melanie that are doing a phenomenal job with going after grants.
Mhm.
I would think that they could get it that way.
I
But
I think my fear is that as a driver who routinely, is driving in the dark up a city street and passes a cyclist that I don't even necessarily recognize is there until I'm nearly right on top of them. I am very nervous. And as a cyclist who is afraid to drive on city streets, I am very nervous that if we don't do something more quickly than the grant cycles allow, we will have traffic fatalities related to bicycles in the city. That is my true concern here.
I understand
it's
what you're
not,
saying,
right.
but isn't there actually laws that show that if you're a cyclist and you're out at night, you have to have flashing lights and necessary
And
reflectors and
these
headlights and things?
cyclists do have flashing lights. And I'm still right on top of them before I see them. Like,
No,
Now-
I don't want to go into a back and forth
Right, yeah,
again. I
that's
just,
right.
I appreciate
No,
it, Liz. Like
I-
I said, I like the idea of the bike development thing. I just don't think that now is the time to do it.
Yeah, and I can completely respect that.
I
because that was
appreciate it.
not right.
I mean, John's telling me that we can, as long as we take the 20 out of brick streets.
Mm-hmm.
Val, Melanie, is there a match associated with this?
Yeah,
How much would we need? Where are we pulling it from?
We have it in Act 13 already. It's for the,
What else?
if this is the safety
Okay.
initiative, is that what this is? The
Yeah.
match
right.
is budgeted currently
It's
in Act
budgeted
13.
currently in Act 13. Okay.
Yeah, and it's on page 64
So
under federal safety initiatives, 89-115.
would we be able to sneak this into Act 13? Would we have, do we have enough? Do you know that off the top of your head? I just ask, I mean, like, to Vince's point, if Vince is concerned about valid concerns, I mean, maybe that's an alternative option to kind of find a middle ground. That's all I'm asking.
Or reduce the
Yeah.
budget somewhere else.
Our Act 13 budget remaining balance stands at 81,000.
What?
Would this
Yeah.
qualify for BG funds, where it's at in that particular section of town?
Would this qualify for CDBG funds? Maybe. Switch.
So if it isn't in a low to mod neighborhood and we can prove citywide benefit, indicating that, people from all over the city would be utilizing those streets, then that would be CDBG eligible.
Mhm.
So I can take a look at that.
Okay. I think that would be,
That's
there's,
a great idea.
yeah, that's an
Okay.
excellent idea. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
Although I would say that, yes, we only have $81,000 in Act 13 surplus right now, which is
Just
right.
an alternative idea.
Not, yeah, not that it couldn't come from there, but.
No, just an
And
alternative
that's
idea.
on page 65.
Mhm. And thank you, Jamie. I requested that information and she was kind enough to build it into the budget, which was excellent.
So thank you for that. So back to Liz's original amendment, that's out there. Any other discussion on it? John mentioned the idea of modifying a different line item for brick streets.
Mhm.
Counter it if we like. Vince, do you have another comment?
Well, I mean, just to John's point here on page 38. Every year it looks like we allocate $50,000 in the budget towards brick streets, and it looks like I don't see any actual expenditures.
I believe that the Director of Streets and Parks did say at one point that they were looking for something this year for brick streets, but it's challenging to
not enough- it's not
it's very
enough money.
expensive to replace the bricks. So that's why they haven't done anything over time. But I will say again, there is an ordinance that we keep it a line item in there. I just don't know if the ordinance specifies how much has to be left
It does
in
not-
that line
it
item.
does not.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think-
So then,
Right.
Right.
so then
I
that,
know it
to
doesn't.
me,
Right.
then you could reduce that as long as that line item is left there.
Right, yeah, no, we have long covered that, to my way of thinking, those streets have been with us and we've done almost no work on them for 200 years. As we have to read the other ones every 10 to 20, I mean, like, value.
There, yeah.
I mean. Claim.
Are there other changes that other members would like to propose? All right. Before we vote on the budget, I'd like to talk about the tax rate a little bit because we've had a couple of directions of dialogue publicly last meeting and then amongst a couple people leading into tonight's meeting. So the current tax millage rate proposed is a third of a mil increase. I don't know that this would happen, but I know, you know, there was open dialogue about the idea of it being larger to the tune of, I think, half a mil. There's been some recent chatter about the idea of reducing it to a quarter mil. And I bring this up now because if we change it one way or the other, we should probably change it in the budget on the revenue side. Is that correct, Jamie?
Well, you will
or
adopt the
do we not
ordinance,
need
the
to?
tax ordinance.
Well, I mean, do you need us to modify the revenue line item?
I don't believe so. It's
No.
whatever
No?
you vote on in the tax ordinance, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So once you
the
get to
the revenue
that,
line is
it
gonna
It
get
will
modified in a
change based
million
on the
ways
tax
anyways.
ordinance.
All right.
Yeah, right,
I'm
yeah.
just asking it now. That's all
Yeah,
right. Well, I mean,
yeah.
we can,
So,
go ahead. Go ahead, Vince.
oh, I just want to add real quick, the proposed 1/3 of a mil increase,
Sure.
is that the proposed increase post all the changes that we just made that reflects that?
Ask your question again.
The proposed millage increase, given the reductions in the line items that we just went through tonight. And then the withdrawal of the sale of City Hall revenue from the budget. That millage still reflect accurately?
What? So we didn't touch the millage rate at all. So the sale of City Hall revenue does not impact the general fund.
Correct.
And
No,
then
we
we
didn't do
didn't
anything with
touch the millage rate at all. So the budget still reads with a third of a mil tax increase in it. To Jamie's point, we don't need to mess with it in the general fund budget. I thought we did, my mistake. We just change it, but I mean, we just change it in the next ordinance, but we're talking about it, so we can, why not here? But Vince, it still reads as a third of a mil tax increase. So. Are there thoughts one way or the other?
I mean, personally, I'm opposed to any kind of a tax millage increase. I understand that, you know, we always say, oh, well, we need to increase taxes so we don't get hit. We need to increase taxes so we don't get hit. You know, I voted for some of those increases in the past, knowing that, you know, they seemed necessary at the time. However, the more I look at things, and I understand that we are all working together, you know, between us, between council, and now we're working more collectively with our departments. But I find it difficult, you know, that we continue to look to our taxpayers to continue raising taxes and placing that burden on our taxpayers, when we should be looking more internally at ourselves and at the agreements that we have within and throughout the city. That's where I think that we should be looking to make up the difference rather than continuing to put that burden on the residents and the businesses that fall within the city limits. So I'm not sure right now. That's the honest truth. I'm not sure right now.
Thank you, Vince. Any other thoughts before we, I guess, sign off on budget and then go into the tax ordinance? Ms. Mealy.
Vis-a-vis the tax rate, it will come as a surprise to no one that I would generally support taking it to half a mil, but I know that will not happen.
Yeah, I don't think it will
this year.
either. Agree.
Right, and that does not, but I will obviously support a 1/3 increase because I think the issue, Vince, with municipal government is that we have a form of government and a way of life that counts on continual growth. But we have a city and frankly, a region in which growth has been relatively stagnant for years. Right, but salaries go up annually and cost of living goes up annually. So it's only fair that salaries go up annually. It's, you know, insurance costs go up annually, all of those things go up. Our tax revenue is flat and potentially decreasing without us increasing the millage rate. But I'm not saying that that's right, and I'm not saying that I like it. Among other reasons, I too am a taxpayer in the city. We all are. That's one of the requirements of holding this position for good reason. The decisions we make impact us. But we need to figure out a way to take ourselves back to a growing tax base, or we need to figure out a way to cut costs. As we've covered, cost cuts are going to be difficult to come by, especially because all of the salaries that we're paying, 158.3 of them as of beginning of 25 are going to increase year over year. And all of us would probably agree that that is just because all of us are probably seeing our expenses go up and our income hopefully go up to match that. But there's some sort of sweet spot that we need to find. One of those things is cuts, but we also need to find a way to increase the tax base in the city. And without that, there is no alternative aside from raising taxes. And the one thing that we obviously cannot do is spend money we don't have. And so what is left to us this year, to me, is to increase taxes by a minimum of 1/3 to leave ourselves in a slightly better position for next year. That's also why I would support a $500,000 increase, because I believe that incremental tax increases are easier for everyone to budget for and to deal with. But I think ideally it would have been a $250,000 over the last couple of years, and we would be in a better budgetary place now than we are. It hasn't been, and we are where we are. I think $1/3 is the least that we can, do.
Any other comments on the tax? I know we're not voting on the tax rate, but it ties into the budget, so I figured we
No,
have a
I guess-
conversation now rather than later is all.
All I would say is I understand 100% where Liz is coming from. As far as spending money that we don't have. My approach is that if we continue to vote to make these increases, in essence, all we're doing is kicking the can down and enabling the same decisions to be made that we've made over the past decades or however long ago that this began. We keep saying, oh, well, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. But well, if we keep voting for millage increases, well, then are we really forcing ourselves to fix it? If we said, you know what, here's the line. I'm not crossing anymore. I'm not voting yes anymore. We're forcing ourselves to fix it. We're going to force ourselves to sit down, have the discussions that nobody wants to have, face some hard truths, and start looking elsewhere. And I'm hopeful. We're having great dialogue now, but I just worry, pardon me, that if we continue to vote for these small millage increases and limp through, that it's just going to persist. That's my concern. But I do agree wholeheartedly, Liz, that we can't keep spending money that we don't have.
Thank you both. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Allison?
Yeah, I really thought long and hard about a $250,000 increase, because if we had done that years ago consistently, we probably wouldn't be in this position. And a quarter, a third, a half, that's not going to move the needle really substantially or materially. But there may be some unforeseen costs come up, or just we need some kind of cushion there. And I feel like I believe, not feel, trying to come up with a reasonable rationale that I could support a $250,000 increase, given that we have the reductions in that we went through and approved. So I think that balance there with that cushion of 300,000, 215 is a quarter mil. That's over $500,000. I think that would be a cushion to protect us somewhat through the year. That's not going to answer next year's budget. We still have to do that. Or I mean, the end of 2025 for 2016 budget. We have to really do a lot of digging and do a lot of homework and come up with the solutions sooner rather than later. So that's what I'm floating, or that's how I'm approaching it.
Appreciate that, Mr. Allison. Any other comments, thoughts on millage? And then, I mean, we can finalize any changes to the general fund budget as well and pass that, so. Okay. Mr. Plizzi?
I think I could understand a quarter of a mil, to Randy's point, just in case something happens. I think I can understand that. I appreciate it. But again, I go back to, I own a business. If I consistently spend more money than I make year after year after year, I go broke and I'm out of business. I can't look for somebody else to continue to make up for the difference that I keep losing because I'm making bad decisions. Or I'm putting myself in bad agreements or whatever it may be. I can't do it. And we can't keep doing it.
Ms. Mealy?
But do you raise your prices, Vince, if you're not covering your bottom line?
Within reason, right up until you start losing customers because you're too expensive.
Right. I mean, I think that's the point that we're looking for here. And that is also the point that I'm making. There has to be a sweet spot in there. And we've
And what I'm
passed
getting
the
at,
sweet spot, but we are,
what's the total millage placed upon residents now to live within the city between
15.
like county, school, and city?
All three. I'm not sure.
Current?
Yeah.
The current for the city is 16.72. Am I?
But he means.
I mean, I'm not sure.
Cities up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the others are.
Yep. That's what that's where I'm at, is that Liz, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
But ultimately, if I continue to place and pass that cost on to my customers to make it up, well, they're going to take their business elsewhere. And I think that that's what's happening here, is that residents and business owners alike within the city are getting fed up with having to consistently pay for higher and higher taxes to where they're leaving. I mean, thankfully, we've seen some reinvestment in the city by way of Maynard Street and a couple other things. Believe me, we're grateful for it. We have to approach things differently, right? And I'm hopeful that we are. I know the administration, the mayor's talked about wanting to sit down and go over things and start working on departments and budgetary planning early on. But like I've said it once before, and I'll say it again, is that the very definition of insanity is repeating the same course of action and expecting a different result. So when I talk about passing minuscule budgets, just thinking, well, things are going to be different next year. Things are going to be different next year. Well, it's just crazy. So where do we draw the line and say, you know what, we're done. This is it. But sorry, real quick, but to Randy's point, I could understand a quarter of a mil just as a safety cushion. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. Mackey?
I mean, just to kind of mirror Councilwoman Mealy's point, is like, we can't go out of business. I mean, we're not a business. We can't go out of business. We have to keep providing services, and tax increase has an effect on our residents, but drawing that imaginary line in the sand can also have a severe impact on our residents as well. So,
And on new development. if we're
right.
not
So,
funding, right, municipal operations.
yeah.
I mean, we have been fortunate to see some reinvestment in the city over the last year or so, and I think that will start bearing fruit in the form of an increased tax base. But if we are hamstringing ourselves so much that we can't help support that reinvestment with city services, I think we risk making the opposite mistake. So just pointing that out. I mean, we are in the end talking about 0.08 of a mil.
Which is what, like 30 some dollars?
Oh,
something like
for a
that?
yeah, I mean, for
Yeah.
on a house, I don't know that, you know.
Yeah,
it
that's what I'm
depends on the
saying. I mean,
house.
it's,
Yeah,
I don't want to say it's minuscule. I mean, like, we have
Right,
residents
but I
that
mean, but to
that's gonna
me, it's-
substantially impact them, but
right.
Say
But-
$33 on $100,000 assessed value.
Right, but I'm talking about if we're
Right.
debating between a quarter mil and
No,
a
I
third of a mil. what-
That's what
yeah,
I'm saying,
Yeah.
I mean, now we're really splitting hairs.
Right,
So-
right. That's kind of my point. But we're splitting hairs potentially to the detriment of the services that we offer, which makes
Right.
me nervous.
And I honestly, I would tonight support a $500,000 increase as well. So, but
okay. I appreciate the dialogue on the tax rate. We can finalize that here in a couple minutes. Any final changes to the budget before we take the vote?
sorry, I just one clarifying point that has absolutely nothing to do with the budget, but it was brought up briefly. Did you say that the city's probationary period for new employees is 6 months?
For the at-will employees. So each contract is different and the at-will employees tend to we follow the city hall contract and their probationary period is 6 months. The
Okay.
other departments, it's different.
Right. So and correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot access your vacation time until the probation period.
Your
is over.
vacation time. Sick is prorated at 6 months as well. So you don't get either until the 6 month, unless you negotiate something otherwise. Correct. You don't get prorated sick time or vacation time until the 6 month period.
That seems a bit extreme.
It's a very outdated thought process on vacation, but it's not something that we've been able to look at and correct yet, just because of past practice and, different HR, we kind of had some turnover. So
Sure.
it is something that I think that the mayor, we've discussed looking into, because it is hard to get, at-wills are usually directors or, higher levels. And
Yeah.
you're basically asking them to come in at no vacation time.
For 6 months.
And then you only get 5 days.
Okay.
And then you have to wait until you're here, I think 2 years to get 10 days.
Okay. Yeah, I think you definitely need to put a priority on looking into that.
Well, that contract's open next year. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
So, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, any final thoughts, comments, changes to the budget? We can take that vote and get into the tax ordinance and probably finish this process up here. Okay. Mrs. Frank, then on the main motion for the second reading of the budget.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
No,
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-1. We'll move to item 10, please.
Ordinance of the city of Williamsport, county of Lycoming, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, fixing the tax rate for all city purposes for the year 2025 in final reading 17.05 mils.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. So this is the second reading of the tax ordinance. It currently reflects a 1/3 of a millage increase. Had a little bit of dialogue on increases, decreases to it. I'll open the floor here for any changes that people want to make to it before we do a vote. But I will say this, to kind of maybe wrap up a lot of the dialogue we've had. Regardless of kind of where we go with the tax rate, we've pretty openly talked about the need for doing something different. And that's not just been council, that's been the administration acknowledging that during the beginning of the budget review sessions we've had. So, I think for the first time that at least I've been on council, I feel like council and the administration are on the same page and needing to address that. And I'm excited to see kind of where those fruits go. I know we've talked about, sending some thoughts through a communication to the administration. And I think we should do that for sure. But I do think one important point that we definitely should openly throw out there is that, this is a process that, and developing this action plan that we as city leaders need to spearhead. But it's going to be most effective, and I'm looking to the administration to be the leader of that. Council's got a role in that. I think we can play a fruitful, insightful role in kind of leveraging the different experiences that we have, blending the different skills that we have. We've got a really good group here. We have, and for the years that I've been on council. But this is, if I've learned anything in my 5 years now on city council, council can lead things. It does not happen as fast and effectively. And that's probably a good thing. It's the nature of how city government's designed, right? That's how our governance model is designed. I think for the urgency that this requires, I'm looking to see the administration spearhead this. I think they're prepared and ready to do that. But I think this is going to go as far as you take it, is my point. We're going to be here to help you and provide our feedback, but we're going to be looking to you to do that. And I think pretty quickly when we get into 2025, I know Councilman Biter made the comment, February timeframe. Sooner is even fine, right? Excited about that process, but let's get it going in 2025, right? So, all right. Does anybody want to make any motions to amend the tax millage rate? Mr. Allison,
I'll make a motion to reduce it to quarter mil.
is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions on the reduction? All right, hearing see none. Mrs. Franklin, the motion to amend.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
No.
Ms. Mealy,
No.
Mr. Biter,
No.
Mr. Yoder.
No, motion fails. I think what was that 5-2?
5-2,
4-3. It was going to fail either way, but
Mhm.
all right. I lost. I thought it was going to fail either way. Sorry.
Well, that was a
I'm
broad
missing.
statement.
I'm missing my. Well, no, I thought I was the fifth. That's what I meant by that. Sorry, I didn't mean that negatively, Randy. My bad.
No problem.
All right,
So
well,
we're still at a third of a mil. Are there other
let's
changes?
have some fun then.
All right.
I'll make a motion to increase the tax rate in the ordinance to 0.5 mils.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments on the proposed change? Hearing see none. Mrs. Frank.
Mr. Allison,
No.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
No.
Ms. Mealy. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Katz,
Thank you. No.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
No.
Mr. Yoder.
No. Motion fails 2-5. I think I said that right.
Yep.
Right?
But it was gonna fail.
It was gonna fail anyway
now. Can I?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes,
I
Ms. Mealy.
get a little punchy sometimes when we talk about numbers for too long. I did not mean to make it sound as though a $500,000 increase would be fun or to be
No,
flippant about
no,
the whole
yeah.
thing.
I mean, look, I truly believe that none of the seven of us want to see any kind of increase. None of us
Obviously.
do. I believe the mayor does not want to see an increase, to be frank. But you know, we're doing it because of what we're anticipating next year,
Mhm.
right? One way or the other. And there's there's a good argument to raise it to 5. There's a good argument to reduce it to a quarter. Seems to me the consensus is probably where it's at. And that's okay. That's okay. So I didn't mean to cut you off, Liz, sorry.
If
So-
you did, I totally deserved it, but I don't think you did.
I deserved it after the, it's gonna fail anyway. Anyway. Any other final thoughts, comments before we take a vote? It's a third and seems like that's where it's gonna land. So, Mr. Pelisi.
One, Randy, I appreciate you making a motion to
Mhm.
reduce it down to a quarter. I do. You know, after I went on and got on my soapbox and talked. Raising taxes. You know, the more I'm thinking about it, and Adam, what you just said, you know, for the first time, feeling really hopeful that, moving forward, moving into 2025, that both we as council and the mayor and his office and his administration and the department heads that he has now, you know, I do feel really good about the team that we have here governing and representing the city. So in that act of, I would be okay with a third. I'll just keep it short and say, you know what, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I'll keep it at a third in the hope that moving into 2025, that we are gonna be starting to work on the 2026 budget, or going into 2026, that we will get that worked on immediately, that we are all gonna work together on it. And we are really gonna dig down into it. And yeah. I would support the third of the mill. But not a half. Oh, hell no.
Well, I think you made that obvious, Vince.
Appreciate that, Vince, and Randy and Liz, to both of your points. I appreciate both of you, you know, proposing changes. You know, neither of them passed. I respect that, but you know, as we kind of said, there's an argument either way, and both are valid. I can't deny that. So I'm grateful for both of you for spearheading both of those. I mean that. So, all right. Any other comments or questions before we take a final vote? Mrs. Frank, then on item 10, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
No.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
No.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-2. Thank you all for a good dialogue with both readings and with both ordinances for the budget and for the tax ordinance. Janice, I don't think I missed anything.
You
Yep.
got them all.
All right.
Except for filing.
Is there
There's
anything to
nothing.
accept for filing?
There's nothing.
Okay. We could just skip that then, right?
Yep.
Okay. Item 16, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be Thursday, January 2nd, 7 PM. We're gonna kick the new year off on a high note. Right here, Trade and Transit 2, third floor. We will both do reorganization and a regular meeting, so I'm sure we'll have both reorg and then also some action items to take at the beginning of the year. Upcoming meetings for committees will be determined. I anticipate we'll probably keep the same schedule, but we'll confirm that for sure. Any comments from members of council? Mr. Pelisi?
Normally, I don't say anything. You know, I voted for the budget. I voted for the third of a mil tax increase. But just putting it out there right now that going in for next year's budget, I won't support any kind of a tax increase in any way, shape or form. So, putting it out, I'm saying that, I'm stating it right here and now. Giving the mayor and the administration and everyone involved a year's time, letting you know that next year I won't support any kind of a tax increase. So really, putting the challenge out there, hoping that we can all come together and find other fiscal means of revenue rather than continuing to place it on our taxpayers and put that burden on them. So.
Understood.
Adam, I have something to say. I'm going to be, what's that state that says show me? Well, I'm going to be in that state. I would like to see and be shown how we're going to do all of this next year. I would like to see the positive route, and I would like to see everybody working together. I just, just so hesitant, and I think only because I've been on this track for so long, and I admire Randy and Liz because the two of you are still going forward. I'm just sitting here going, yep, here we go again. And other than that, I have a positive thing. They're having a cookie crawl downtown on Saturday. Come on downtown and go to the shops and get a cookie.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'll just leave you all with this. I say this end every year, but I mean it. Just grateful for all 6 of you. I learned a lot from all 6 of you. I enjoy, talking, learning from, working with all 6 of you. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. This has probably been one of the most rewarding growth experiences I've had professionally, probably. And I'm grateful to share the journey with you. So Merry Christmas to all 6 of you, the administration as well, to the public. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, be safe, enjoy some time with your loved ones. And I'm looking forward to our work in 2025. Mr. Allison.
It's just, I'd like to thank the administration, everybody that worked on this budget this year. You did a great job. And a lot of cooperation. We had a lot of good discussions. We asked for some things. You came back and gave us some options. So that's one of the things that makes me positive about next year. I feel like we're more of a team at this point, and moving in that direction. I think we're going to increase in our ability to work together in that way. So I feel really positive about that, and I echo your sentiments as well. I think we have a good group here, and we work well together. I have to vote differently than Liz once in a while because
otherwise people would get
I know.
suspicious.
But yeah, and I appreciate everything that's been done. So
Here. Any comments from the administration?
Likewise, I'll just echo this. Thank you.
Thank you too. Any comments from the public? Any clarifications from the news media needed? You're good? All right. Last meeting of the year, take a motion, a second for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Merry Christmas and happy